The human design tribal circuit is the energy for supporting our loved ones, our community, our tribe, and ensuring that they have everything they need in order to not only survive, but to thrive. In today's episode, I'm giving an overview of the tribal circuit and its two subcircuits, and I'll cover those two subcircuits individually in the following two episodes next week and the week after. Today, I'm going to cover what the tribal circuit is, how people with strong activations in this circuit impact others, the emotional themes tied to this energy, and how it applies to business and relationships. Whether or not you have a lot of tribal circuitry in your chart, you will definitely be impacted by this energy through planetary transits, through your relationship with others, through your environment. So this episode really is for everybody, regardless whether you have a lot of this circuitry or not. Welcome to Heart-Centered Human Design, the show that empowers heart-centered entrepreneurs to use human design and emotional intelligence to create meaningful success, work-life balance, and transform their passion and purpose into impact and prosperity. I'm your host, Vanessa Naja, human design mentor and business coach, and I love helping you understand and embody this system so you can use it to be on purpose and fulfill your potential. If you haven't already taken advantage of your free bite-sized human design reading with me, make sure to check that out at vanessanaja.com/bite-size. You get to ask me any question that you want about your life, your relationships, your business, your career, and I'll respond with a voice note directly to your inbox with actionable, practical, and very focused advice that is based on your chart to help you answer your question. Link is in the show notes. So we've officially gotten to tribal circuitry in this series on human design circuitry. We just covered the entire individual circuit, including integration, knowing, and centering. And now we're moving on to the next circuit. And you can think of circuitry kind of like a thematic. Circuitry is how the energy flows through your chart, and it provides different themes to your energy. Now, most people have a combination. You might be really strong in one circuit and not have as much in other circuits, meaning you're going to lean towards that theme. You may have two, or you may have all three like I do. And circuitry are basically the gates and channels in your human design chart. They connect the centers. And if you have them defined in your chart, meaning colored in, that means that this is consistent energy for you. And if you are watching, or you're somewhere where you're watching, you will see what the circuit looks like, so you can compare your chart and check if you have a lot of the circuitry. You may already know. And if you're not somewhere where you're watching, you can always come back later or check the post on Instagram at @HDVanessanaja. That also has an image of the circuitry, so you can compare your chart. If you have the circuitry defined, that means either gates or channels in the circuit will be colored in your chart. That means this energy is something you have consistent access to. It is something that you broadcast out into the world and others pick up from you. If the energy is undefined, meaning it is not colored in or in white in your chart, that means this is an area of great wisdom for you. You will be taking in and amplifying this energy from other people, from planetary transits, and there's actually a major tribal transit happening at the time of this recording. You will be experiencing all of this, and you get to become incredibly wise about it. It's not consistent energy for you. You're not broadcasting it out to others. However, the energy is always there for you when you need it, when you're following your strategy and authority, because you will attract the right people that will help provide you with what you need when you need it. Now, you could have gates defined in the circuitry. You could have entire channels defined. There's a lot of different ways that this can look in your chart. And depending on how it's defined, you're going to be impacted by it in different ways. So the tribal circuit is responsible for support, resources, agreements, bargains, bonding with groups. And basically, the overall theme is, with tribal circuitry, you will create something new with somebody else. You will make sure that you can sustain whatever you're creating to its fruition. This is where children and mating lives in the tribal circuit. So this could be creating new babies, making sure they grow up and have everything they need. It could also be business. It could be partnerships. It could be agreements. It could be new creative projects. And there is a lot of loyalty here, responsibility, being able to sustain the tribe, really having that energy to support others, sometimes at the expense of yourself. And this can be problematic if you have tribal circuitry and individual circuitry can kind of compete here, because individual circuitry is so much about the self, or tribal is about your community. There can be some push-pull here if you have a lot of both of these circuits. And I know this well because I do have a lot of both. And for me, there has always been that, okay, do I sacrifice myself and do what the tribe needs me to do in order to sustain the tribe or not? And again, if this shows up for you in any way, shape, or form, the solution to this problem, or this seeming problem, the solution to this problem is going back to your inner authority, following strategy and authority, because that will let you know what the correct thing is. There's a lot of emphasis here on loyalty, responsibility, and overall sustaining the tribe, making sure that they have the resources and even creating the resources that they need in order to be sustained. One of the ways that the tribal circuit is different from the individual circuit is that it operates a lot through needs and bargains, and not so much through personal truth like individual circuitry. So with tribal circuitry, this can be very much us versus them energy, and things like institutions, organized religion, these types of things that are very hierarchical fall into the category of the tribal circuit. So it's much more about the institution, the hierarchy, and the tribe than it is about the individual and something that is true for the individual. The tribal circuit covers the root center, which is the drive and stamina, the emotional solar plexus, emotional intelligence, the will center, which is very much about willpower and resources. And it also includes the spleen, which is the survival instinct and intuition. And then it connects through one channel up to the throat through communication, action, and expression. Now, notice there is no G center in the tribal circuit. There is no identity and direction. The G center is not touched by the tribal circuit. So it's not about yourself, your own identity and direction. And then also the head or inspiration center and the ajna and conceptualization center are not involved in the tribal circuit either. Now, some of the key themes in the tribal circuit are support and bargains. Everything here is about giving and taking. There can be a lot of the giving in order to receive. There is a lot about bargains here. So if I do this for you, you do this for me. This is about resources and protection, making sure that what you're creating actually makes it to fruition and it has all the resources that it needs, food, shelter, all of these types of things. Tribal energy can be very affectionate energy. So a lot of times people that have a lot of this energy are very touchy-feely. Like touch is really the sense of the tribal circuit. And, this includes things like handshakes, like shaking hands once you have made a bargain. So physical connection is a very important aspect of tribal energy. One of the channels that lives here is the channel of mating. And obviously, when you are mating and creating something new, like a baby, there is going to be some physical interaction there. So a lot of affection, physical touch, comforting, nurturing lives in the tribal circuit. There are some important emotional aspects to tribal circuitry. As I said before, tribal circuitry does go through the emotional solar plexus, and there are actually 3 channels that are technically tribal that activate the solar plexus. One of them is the channel 59.6, which is the source wave, which goes from the sacral center to the solar plexus. The other 2 are what are technically called the tribal wave. This is channel 1949 from the root to the solar plexus, and channel 3740 from the solar plexus to the will center. And incidentally, at the time of this recording, channel 3740 is actually in transit, and that is my emotional channel. Now, with the tribal emotional wave, anybody that has either the 1949 or the 3740 has the tribal wave. The 59.6 is technically a tribal channel. It's part of the tribal circuit. It's a little bit different, though. The 59.6 can be a lot more even keel than the other 2 waves. However, all of these waves are usually brought to the surface by your interaction with your loved ones. And when something is going wrong with your loved ones, there can be issues that come up with these waves. Now, with the actual tribal waves, and it's different from the other emotional waves, I have done an entire podcast episode on the tribal waves. I'll be sure to link it in the show notes. The tribal wave builds up pressure over time when somebody is not meeting agreements or there's something going on in the relationship. So the tribal wave is a wave that ratchets up slowly. It builds up pressure over time. And the way that works is that somebody with a tribal wave may have an agreement with somebody else and say this agreement is like, okay, I like the house to be clean. I don't want clothes or laundry laying around on the floor. I like things put away. And they come home and there are dirty towels on the floor. So the person with that tribal wave, it ratchets up a little bit. It's like, okay, I don't like that. They might not say anything. They put the towels away. The other person doesn't realize anything's wrong because there hasn't been any communication. The next day, the person with the tribal wave comes home and there are dirty dishes in the sink, and they do not like that. Again, the wave ratchets up a little bit, and they might say, hey, you said, you would do the dishes and there are dirty dishes in the sink, or they might not say anything. But in any case, the wave has ratcheted up again. And slowly over time, it builds and it builds. And then some very small, seemingly like teeny thing, like, there's a dirty sock on the floor next to the hamper instead of in the hamper, just causes the wave to completely explode and crash. And these crashes are very disproportionate to what usually is the straw that broke the camel's back, and they can leave a lot of collateral damage. The tribal wave is extremely explosive, and it's the explosion of the wave that then resets the wave. It releases the pressure and it resets the wave. Now, the problem that can happen, there are a few things here. One, if you are somebody that has a tribal wave, you need to allow yourself to have that explosion without shame, without blame, without making yourself wrong, without making other people wrong. And you want to be really careful of doing it without any kind of collateral damage. So I do have this wave. I have these explosions. I have learned so much about this. And when I can sense when one is coming on, and I spend time alone in my own space, and maybe I need to scream in a pillow, maybe I need to have a crying fit, whatever it is to relieve the tension without going off on somebody else. The problem is when you really go off and you take out that energy on somebody else, because when the wave resets, you're fine the next day. You're over it. The pressure has been relieved, but the other person might not be over it. And you can do a lot of damage when you are really exploding all over somebody else. And this can be a huge issue in relationships, in business partnerships. This can really cause all kinds of issues. Anybody that has a tribal wave, emotional authority, you do have to wait through your wave. Now, the beautiful thing is after the crash, and when you allow yourself to really feel it without shame, without blame, without making anybody wrong, you actually get gold on the other side. You get information that comes through that you needed to get when you allow yourself to have that crash. Not repressing it, not shoving it down, not distracting yourself from it, but just really allowing yourself to feel it without taking it out on somebody else. Now, sometimes you may have an emotional crash when you need to make a major decision about something. And you will get to that point afterwards where you may have that clarity. Again, you have to go through the wave in order to really get that clarity. So it's such an important part of emotional authority for people with the tribal wave. It doesn't mean that you need to have a massive emotional crash in order to come to a conclusion or make a decision. It just may happen, and you will get a lot of clarity and a lot of information when you allow yourself to have that crash. Now, when it comes to the tribal wave, you are, regardless of how much work in deconditioning you do, if you have this defined in your chart, you're going to occasionally have these explosions. And like I said, this is good. There's information for you in these explosions, but you don't necessarily need to have them all the time. One important way is to make sure you communicate the agreements that you have with your loved ones, because it can happen so often that you think you have an agreement with somebody that you made in your head, but you didn't actually make that agreement. The other person has no idea. And then your wave is continuing to like ratchet up based on an agreement you didn't actually verbally make. And that is literally only living in your head. The other thing is when these little pressure buildups come, you need to communicate with your loved ones, with your partner, with your children, with your colleagues at work, wherever this is coming from. If you communicate clearly, openly, and lovingly about what the agreement was, so that the other person has the opportunity to rectify that and get in line with the agreement, it's going to keep that pressure from building up to the point of when there's an explosion. The pressure will actually be able to be relieved before you get to that point, which makes life a lot easier. There are also some fears that are inherent in tribal circuitry. And one of the main ones is that fear of being outcast and rejected from the tribe. And this can wreak havoc in many different situations. And one of them is when it comes to business. If you're afraid to share your truth, what is correct for you, what you're working on, because you are afraid that somebody in the tribe might reject you for it, you're going to not market yourself. You're probably not going to share about your business on social media. You are not going to share your truth. And that is going to be a big issue in business. It might even be to the point where you don't even start a business that you know is correct for you, that you know is in alignment with your design, because you are afraid of what the tribe might do. So doing your deconditioning work, following strategy and authority, really understanding yourself through understanding and embodying your human design is what is going to help you with this. There are a lot of fears involved in the tribal circuit. So we have a lot of the fears of the emotional solar plexus. I did an entire episode on that. We also have a lot of fears in the spleen, those existential fears that can show up, that tribal circuitry also ties into. And these fears need to be overcome in order for you to be on purpose and fulfill your potential. Now, one thing that you can think about when it comes to fears and when it comes to your strategy and authority, sometimes fears might mask your strategy and authority. You'll go up into your head and you'll be like, oh, well, if I'm feeling this way about it, it must be a no. And that's not necessarily the case. Going back into your body, really checking in with your actual authority is super important. And one little hack for this is if you're really afraid of doing something, you can look at your ideal future self. Are they doing this thing? Is whatever you're afraid of something a regular part of what they do all the time? If it is, this is a fear that you definitely want to overcome. You can allow yourself to feel that fear, do it anyway. And then by doing that, that is when that fear dissipates. And once you've overcome the fear, it's not going to be an issue anymore. I do have multiple episodes about the fears, the emotional waves, and all kinds of other fun stuff. I will be linking them in the show notes if you want to go back and check those out. Now, when it comes to relationships with the tribal circuit, people that have a lot of tribal circuitry in their chart, they are going to be very much about their relationships, about their tribe, about their community. They will prioritize commitment, family, whoever is part of their community, and they will prioritize that over individuality. Now, this can become an issue when you're constantly self-sacrificing and you're not following your strategy and authority and doing what is correct for you because you want to please others. So again, coming back to that strategy and authority piece is so important in order for you to really step into your full potential. Now, your strategy and authority may tell you, okay, I need to make this sacrifice for my community. And if that's correct for you, then great, it will send you on the correct trajectory. But again, if it's like, no, I'm going to sacrifice, I'm not going to do what's correct for me because it might upset my community or my family or whatever, even though my strategy is telling me I need to do this thing, when you're not following a strategy and authority, then that's, first of all, it's going to bring up your not self theme a lot. So for generators and manifesting generators, that is frustration. For manifestors and also manifesting generators, there's anger. For reflectors, it's disappointment. And for projectors, it's bitterness. You might be feeling that a lot when you're really not following your strategy and authority and making sacrifices for others that are not the correct sacrifices for you to make. There are definitely challenges with tribal energy. This can very much be that cliquish energy, that exclusivity energy, this us versus them energy. And we do see this a lot in organized religion, which is part of tribal circuitry. You can also see this in competing businesses. There's a lot of business energy in tribal circuitry, and it can be very exclusive. People can feel left out of tribes. There are definitely aspects to watch out for. Also, War and Peace lives in tribal circuitry, because when tribes go to war with each other, again, it's that us versus them energy. And these are things that are actually breaking down and changing in this new era that we are slowly moving into. But this is very much a huge part of our past and something that we want to be aware of that can be potentially challenging, especially if you see somebody that has a lot of tribal circuitry in their design. Now, there are two sub-circuits in the tribal circuit. The first is the ego circuit. This is very much about like commerce, material support. There's a lot of business energy in this. It's about surviving and thriving through resources, money, bargains, and agreements. Things like the marriage contract are in this particular circuit, and also This is where the tribal circuit expresses through communication and action in the throat center. I'll be going into more detail about that in its own episode. And the other one is the defense circuit, which is a very small circuit, only 2 channels, but it is extremely powerful. This is about care, this is about protection, and this is an aura busting circuit. And what that means, people with the defense circuit, if somebody with a lot of individuality or somebody that just doesn't have a lot of tribal energy in their chart stands next to somebody or in the aura of somebody with the defense circuit, that other person is naturally going to become more tribal. It's really fascinating energy. Now, there are themes here of nurturing, raising, and protecting children, the tribe, your creations, whatever you're bringing out in the world. This is all in the defense circuit. It's creating, and then it is protecting and making sure whatever it is you've created makes it to fruition. If you do have a lot of tribal circuitry in your chart, it's so important to really honor your commitments. This energy does thrive in structured and reciprocal relationships where you make a bargain, you hold up your end of the bargain, the other party holds up their end of the bargain, and things go smoothly. You do want to find that ability, that fine balance to create stability in both your personal and your professional life, and to be able to bring your work and your life into balance. And you want to be careful about being too exclusive, forming cliques, keeping other people out, and being careful that your level of loyalty doesn't become a sense of gatekeeping. Again, following strategy and authority is key here to know what the correct next steps are for you, especially if you have a lot of this energy. And if you do not have a lot of tribal circuitry, you want to understand that your loved ones that do have a lot of tribal circuitry, they operate on loyalty and bargains and agreements. Don't take it personally if a tribal person prioritizes their community over other things. This is often the case with people that are very strong in the tribal circuit. You want to make sure that you are establishing clear agreements and that those are actually communicated, whether that is through spoken or written word. You want to make sure those agreements are actually mutually agreed upon, that they've been communicated, that they are not just living in your head. And you may have to ask the person with tribal circuitry. They might not be aware of this. If there's any agreement that maybe you're not aware of, if there's any bargain, if there's anything that they want you to do for them in return for the things that they are doing for you. Open communication is such an important aspect of healthy relationships, both in your personal life and in your business. If you don't have a lot of tribal energy, you can become incredibly wise about it, because remember, anything that's undefined, you can really create wisdom about. It can also be helpful to have a partner or somebody that does have this energy to really help you when it comes to negotiating, making agreements, and creating structure. And some questions to ask yourself about tribal circuitry. Reflect on your own relationship with supporting your loved one's responsibility in the agreements that you make. And ask yourself, do I value my agreements and my commitments, or do I struggle with obligations and the commitments that I've made? And then you can also ask, what role does loyalty, support, and agreements play in my relationships and my career? So that is our overview of the tribal circuit. And then the next 2 episodes, we'll be diving deeper into the defense circuit and the ego circuit. And if you have not yet gotten your free bite-sized human design reading, make sure to check it out. Ask me anything, including questions about tribal circuitry in your chart or circuitry that you have undefined. I've had clients tell me that in this little mini no strings attached reading, they have gotten more clarity than they have in years of therapy. So be sure to check it out at vanessanaja.com/bite-size. Link is in the show notes. And you can also get your free human design purpose report that dives into your unique purpose, including some of the fears and emotional aspects that show up in your specific design. You can get that one at vanessanaja.com/free guide. It is unique to your design. This is not one of those one-size-fits-all things. And there's lots of valuable information and practical tips to help you be on purpose and fulfill your potential. Now, I would love to hear from you. What did you learn in this episode? Do you have a lot of tribal circuitry, or do you know someone that does? How does this show up in your life? Please leave a comment and let me know how you experience tribal circuitry in your own life and in the lives of those around you. And be sure to head on over to Instagram at hdvanessanaja. There will be plenty of posts coming up on the tribal circuit, including images of the tribal circuit, so you can compare your chart. And you can feel free to DM me any questions that you might have, anything that comes up for you. I absolutely love hearing from you. Thank you so much for listening or watching.